Wisdom. It's an incredibly valuable asset. Some would say more precious than gold. It's attractive, appealing, admirable. Conversely, a lack of wisdom is the basis of immaturity, blind spots, and bad decisions. Wisdom. It can be gained over time, but it can't be rushed. But wisdom can be shared. That's precisely what we are here to do right now. Today, we are here to hack wisdom, to distill it, to understand it, and to process it. Why? To get better at life. Welcome to the main thing. This is your new 9-minute podcast. I'm your host, Skip Linneberg, and I've set out to interview the wisest people I know. We'll see what we can learn from each one when they're faced with an incredibly difficult, soul-piercing question. Welcome to your Wisdom Podcast. If you're new, I'm Skip Linneberg. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'll be your host for the next 25 minutes. If you're a subscriber or returning listener, welcome back to this cozy learning space where we gather twice a month to hear from one of the wisest people around. As we study their wisdom and learn together, we get a little better at life. Today's guest is a talented young professional and a friend of our family. He's one of the state's most talented upcoming journalists whose career is off to a blazing start with the largest newspaper in West Virginia. None of those facts, none of them are the reason I invited Taylor Kennedy onto this podcast. You see, about 2 months ago, Taylor wrote a very courageous and transparent open letter on social media to his community of friends and followers. That's where I saw it. That's where I saw this story of his battle with anxiety and panic attacks. And it was the first time Taylor had shared any of this publicly. That is the reason I invited Taylor onto the podcast. In just a few moments, you'll find out why Taylor Kennedy chose to share that very personal and vulnerable story in such a public forum. But first, I want to give a shout out of gratitude to Allison from West Virginia. Allison, thank you so much for supporting the mission of this podcast. Thank you for believing in what we're doing here. Because of your generous support, we're able to keep this pipeline of wisdom flowing. In today's powerful, inspiring episode, you will learn about the importance of mental wellness, the huge impact of mentors and mentoring, why reaching out for help is not a sign of weakness, and of course, you'll discover the main thing Taylor has learned in his lifetime. Now, here's a bit more about our wise guest, Taylor Kennedy. Taylor is a sports reporter and columnist for the Charleston Gazette-Mail under the HD Media umbrella. Taylor's primary coverage area is the Kanawha Valley and covering everything high school sports, with an occasional splash in WVU and Marshall athletics. In his spare time when Taylor is not covering sports, he enjoys watching sports. Taylor has been able to work alongside a few of West Virginia's most influential media icons, including Tony Caridi, Hoppy Kercheval, and Fred Persinger. Taylor, who's a graduate of West Virginia University, lives in Charleston, West Virginia, where he joins us today. Now find your ticket, hit the concession stand, and settle into your front row seat. Over the next 25 minutes, you will discover why Taylor Kennedy is one of the wisest people I know. Taylor Kennedy, welcome to the Main Thing Podcast. So great to be with you today.
Thank you, Skip. I appreciate the invitation, as always.
I know you're a sports nut. You love sports like I do. I know you played sports. Where did that love of sports originate for you?
My dad was really big into basketball and other sports as well, and my parents especially, but more including my dad. He was really big in just trying to get me active, getting out there. I mean, we went through t-ball, we went through soccer, but then really whenever I started playing basketball and he started coaching me with basketball, that's where that love really started brewing. That's really when it started blossoming into what has eventually come into a career so far in sports journalism.
Did you think you'd end up in sports journalism?
Well, that's a funny story. So back in the 4th grade with Miss Anderson's class at Bible Center School, each year we did class superlatives, and one of my superlatives, which we had on a paper sheet and everything, it said, most likely to be a sports journalist, Taylor Kennedy. And so my mom hung on to that for the longest time. I don't know if she still has it or not, but it was one of the coolest things just to see that. Because like I was at the book fair, especially, we would always have like the Sports Illustrated books. So I would just go in through there with like a highlighter and start highlighting a bunch of different things like statistics. I was really big into Tim Tebow. So anytime I saw something Tim Tebow related, then LeBron James, I started highlighting every single thing, memorizing what they were saying. And then when we would talk sports during lunch, I had backup. So I was prepared. That was kind of whenever I started furthering myself into loving more things about sports journalism.
You mentioned Bible Center School, and that's how we're connected. Both my kids went there through middle school, and you were a student there. Mm-hmm. We met through the sports program, through basketball, and I know that you played for Coach Dick Reif and Coach John Young, and I had the honor and the blessing of coaching alongside them for 2 years.
Well, my dad was also on that staff my 7th and 8th grade year, so that was really special as well. Yeah. But winning a middle school championship at the WVCAT was really, really special. Just to be able to win one with my dad was really unique.
Oh yeah.
Obviously being able to win one with just a lot of guys that I grew up with all throughout kindergarten to 5th grade to 8th grade. I mean, that was just really special and unique.
It's a stellar group of young men.
Well, if you think about it too, the average height of our starting 5 was over 6 foot.
Yeah, which is unusual.
I think looking back on that, I mean, Coach Reif, Coach Young, and my dad all taught us life lessons throughout our 7th and 8th grade year. But one stands out the most was our 7th grade year. We were doing wall sits. So whenever you walk into the Ram, I vividly remember this. So you walk into the Ram Center, and on the right side of the gymnasium, they have the window panels, and then they have like the cinder block wall. Mm-hmm. And we're all doing wall sits before we do practice. And we're sitting there, and Coach Reif told us to hold up our arms. Mm-hmm. So we would hold up our arms.
So squatting there.
Yes,
squatting
while we're doing the wall sit. He would go through, and he told us to lift up our arms. So we lifted up our arms, and by doing this, he wanted to see if we were wearing deodorant. Very odd, because as a 7th grader, you're like, what is this guy doing?
Right.
Like, we're trying to learn basketball, but he's here to teach us about personal hygiene.
Is he going to come by and smack me in the stomach and tell me to tighten my abs or what?
You know him. I mean, he was notorious for doing that. So he would do that. And, I mean, he would literally go from like the first guy all the way to the end, just making sure we're wearing deodorant. And he told us, he said, if you're not wearing deodorant when you come into practice, you're running.
Okay.
So from that, I mean, he literally handed us like little sticks of deodorant as well. And from that point on, sorry for the personal story there, but that was kind of like the kickstart into me wearing deodorant.
I imagine Coach Young, he liked to scrimmage in. You probably had some low post Greco-Roman wrestling moments with Coach Young.
I've known Coach Young since I was a baby. Like him and his wife Charlene were there whenever I was born.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And
wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. They've been a really big part of my life.
Taylor, in your work that you do today, you cover sports all over the region, all across the state. What's it like for you to arrive early to cover a game, whether it's a baseball field, the stands aren't full yet, it's a basketball gymnasium, a small one in a small corner of West Virginia, and you're there early. Maybe the guys are just starting to warm up and get some shots up. What do you love about that experience of arriving in that pregame setting?
I'll give you an example. I'm at a baseball game, and again, I'm doing this for the kids. I'm doing this to give them memories that they can tell their kids about 25, 35 years from now. But I'm at this baseball game, and one of the players recognizes me, and he says, "Hey, Taylor, how are you doing tonight?" And I kind of made sure I had to kind of look around to see if anybody else was named Taylor. And he looked and he was looking at me, and I said, "I'm doing really well." I said, "Good luck tonight." And he's like, "Are you going to be up in the press box?" And I said, "Yeah, that's where I'm headed right now."
Yeah.
And just that kind of stuff really, really sits well with me, because whenever I do an article or I do a feature or I do a game story and I'm including these players' names, I'm not just doing it to get clicks on a story. I'm doing it to, again, give the player, give the coach, give the community something they can latch on to and hold on to for a long time. Whenever I go somewhere new, I like looking around, seeing what kind of stuff do they have up on the wall, how neat it looks, the feel of the whole place, the environment. And I walked past this newspaper clipping, and I did a double take, and I said, I'm squinting whenever I'm doing it. I'm like, is that me? It's my byline for a story I had done on a Herbert Hoover player that had played in the North-South football game that last June. And seeing that, again, just reassured me that what I'm doing has a purpose. What I'm doing is something that people appreciate.
Yeah.
And it's something that I appreciate and love doing. And that's why I continue to do it. I wouldn't do this if I didn't love it.
I was on Facebook one day. I'm not on there that often anymore, but I just was, scrolling through like I was killing time for something. And I saw a lengthy post from you. There was a narrative underneath the photo, and the more, there's more there. You click the more and expand it. And I read just a really heartfelt, authentic story from you where you chose to share about your struggle with a mental health issue, anxiety and panic attacks. And I just really admired and respected that, because mental health is a topic that's near and dear to me. I've battled anxiety. I've had some panic attacks at different stages in my life, but it's a topic that many of our guests on this show have dealt with, or we get into conversations about taking care of our mental health, overcoming mental health challenges, whether it's depression, anxiety, whatever it might be. It's a personal mission of mine to remove any stigma that might remain out there. People that say, oh, that's just weakness, or that's all in the head, or that's something that we don't talk about. I don't buy that. And from your post, I'm going to guess that you kind of feel the same way I do about it.
I've had a lot of time to reflect on this journey, I guess you could say. I mean, it's been a journey just because it's been a lot of ups and downs, obviously.
Sure.
And I look back, so it was 5 years ago to the day when I posted that post back in March. And in the past, I had dealt with just trying to get through things, occasional things here and there, but nothing very severe in a sense.
Okay.
I was at a movie in Morgantown, and this was right around the same time that WVU, which is where I was attending at the time, had let students go home due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, so this is 2020.
I literally just gotten done with the City Net Statewide Sports Line that night, and then it was a Friday night, and I just wanted to just go take some time alone, just spend some time by myself, just kind of just enjoy my evening.
Okay.
And so I went to the movies. Towards the end, I kind of felt uneasy. Thought just going to the bathroom, putting some water on my face would help. And
Taylor, walking into the theater that day,
normal.
You
completely
felt
normal.
Okay.
Completely normal. And I was walking out. I was walking to the bathroom. Felt uneasy still. Put some water on my face. Felt okay. But then once the end of the movie happened, I'm walking back to my car now. Things really started taking a different turn, and that's when it started going downhill. So my mom...
What were you feeling? For someone
it felt
that
like I was
hasn't
having
had
a massive heart attack.
Someone that hasn't had a panic attack.
Yeah. Like I just felt, I could just literally felt like my heart was coming out of my chest.
Okay.
And it started picking up its pace a lot. And
any kind of like a cold sweat or
a little bit
flush?
A little bit. I mean, okay. I could definitely kind of feel a little uneasy just from a woozy perspective.
Okay, off balance.
Yeah, off balance would be the correct word to use. I get to my car. I'm sitting there in the parking lot, and I just feel like I shouldn't drive, which is probably the best decision I ever made.
Right on.
And I'm sitting there, and it was a Friday night, and I called my mom. I knew she would be awake.
Yeah.
So I called her. And I said, just stay on the phone. I don't know what's happening. Just stay on the phone and let's get through this. So she was really confused. And then she kind of saw what was happening because we were on FaceTime.
Okay.
And she just started seeing what was happening and what was transpiring. And then she's like, are you okay? I said, no, I feel like I'm legit having a heart attack. But I was actually having a panic attack. And that was whenever I literally felt like a cartoon, like a Looney Tune. And I just felt like my heart was just like coming out of my chest so far. And I just felt so weak. I felt unbalanced, even though I was sitting down. It was just something I was so scared at the time because it was something I had never dealt with before. And just to be able to sit through that and just feel it was just something I don't wish upon anybody.
And Taylor, about how long did it last? And did it dissipate, or did you have to go get medical care?
It lasted about 45 seconds to a minute.
Okay.
So then whenever it...
Longest minute of your life.
Oh.
I'm sure.
That was probably the longest minute I've ever had in my life, yeah. My dad and my mom are now talking to me, just trying to get me to calm down, which helped.
Sure.
And then about 5 minutes later, another one had occurred, but this one felt a lot worse. So think about it, like in a span of about 7 minutes.
Okay.
I had 2 massive panic attacks that literally made me feel like I was dying. That was probably, like, I've been on roller coasters before and I've been to haunted houses, but that was the scariest thing I had ever been through in my life. So we called 911, EMS comes, and they start taking my blood pressure. I don't remember the exact measurements for my heart rate or my blood pressure, but it was not good. Like, really not good.
Really elevated.
Very, very elevated. And they said, we need to take you in just to kind of just do some normal procedures and stuff like that. And I said, that's fine. Let's just do it. I go to the hospital. I'm sitting there at WVU Medicine and at Ruby Memorial. And I'm just sitting there in a bed. They're taking my blood pressure, taking blood. They're doing all these different procedures, and I'm just thinking, this is something I'd never been through before in my life. They literally let me sleep a little bit, then they took me back to my car. I got my car, went back to my apartment downtown, and at this point, I was just so exhausted.
Sure.
It felt like I just ran the Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
And I go upstairs to my room, I lay down, and I just sleep. I sleep for probably 10 hours. I exaggerated the 10 hours, but I slept till about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. My phone is just absolutely just bombarded with text messages and calls. I went home during COVID, and obviously the nationwide lockdown happened. So I was home from March until I went back to school in August.
Okay.
So that was an interesting time period.
Yeah. I would imagine that you're fearing another one coming.
Yeah, that was a big thing. So I had the 2 that night that I mentioned, and then my grandmother had passed away a month later.
Oh, goodness. And
we had a lot of people coming to the house. I'm just sitting there on the front porch, and I had to sit down regardless, just because it just felt so exhausted. And then eventually it led to a panic attack. I went upstairs. My mom knew what was going on. My mom had also dealt with it, so she was my rock through it all. And she still is. But she knew what I was going through, and then whenever I came back downstairs afterwards, she's just like, "Are you okay?" I said, "No, I just had another episode. There's just a lot going on."
Yeah.
So since then, there's been some sporadically, but nothing what I've experienced back in March of 2020.
Talk to us about how you are taking care of yourself differently since that happened. If you've kind of stepped up your self-care game in any way to mitigate the frequency of these or the severity when they do happen.
Whenever I feel like I feel uneasy, I just work.
Okay.
I just work. Now, granted, some people think that leads to more anxiety. Yeah, it could. But if I pace myself in a certain way or a different way than what I'm normally doing, then I've learned that's the best way I can cope with it. So being busy, as much of an old man thing of me to say that's just how I operate. And I've told my dad that before, and he's like, sometimes just being focused on something else rather than what's going on internally is the best form of medicine.
What advice would you have, Taylor, for someone out there listening today going, my gosh, this is this is what I'm dealing with right now. What should they do? What action steps could they take?
Well, first off, I'm 25 and I don't have all the answers. So that's the big thing. But the big thing I would say is I think talking to people and surrounding yourself with people that you trust and you are willing to open up with is really, really important. Because here's the thing, and you mentioned you said the right thing early on. The stigma of people thinking it's not okay to open up about it is completely false.
Yeah.
And going back to that post, it amazes me the power of that post. I just did it just to kind of just shed light on the mental health side of things and the anxiety side of things, what I go through, and hopefully that relates to somebody. But I never imagined, and this is one of the great things about social media that gets overlooked, but I still get people to this day talking to me about that.
Yeah.
And I had so many messages from administrators to people that I know very well, to coaches, everybody just saying that was what you did resonates with me, and I appreciate the steps forward that you took to do that.
Right on.
And that's why I said at the end of my post that if there's anybody out there that deals with it, the line of communication with me is wide open.
Mm-hmm. So don't keep it bottled up. Don't live in shame and isolation. Talk to someone. Get help from a counselor, mental health, medical professional.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing.
192 extra minutes of wisdom. That's what you get when you become a patron of the Main Thing podcast. Many of you continue to say, we want to hear more from these wise guests. That's precisely what patrons of our podcast get. Exclusive access to bonus episodes called The Whole Thing. These 30-minute special shows bring you a deeper dive into our guests' wisdom. Less editing, more laughter. Less time limits, more stories. Unlock those 192 extra minutes of wisdom for yourself for as little as $9 per month through the Patreon platform. And when you become a patron, you also get access to wisdom essays, behind-the-scenes glimpses, and access to special patron-only wisdom gatherings. Head over to patreon.com/themainthingpodcast. Go unlock your 192 extra minutes of wisdom. Taylor Kennedy, what's the main thing you've learned in your lifetime so far?
Skip, the main thing that I've learned in my lifetime is being a sponge. And that's just being able to soak in all the information that I've been able to learn, witness, and just really grow off of as well. Just continuing to be a sponge in not only my professional world, but also just in my life in general.
I love that. Soak it all up.
Yeah.
Soak up as much as you can. Be a really big absorbent sponge. When did that land for you?
It really originated back whenever I was working up in Morgantown with MetroNews, whenever I was working with Tony and those guys. Just being around those individuals and the knowledge that they shared and the experience that they allowed me to embark on with them honestly was life-changing. I mean, I look back on that time period of my life. I mean, I spent 5 years in Morgantown, and that was life-changing to me.
Let's talk a little bit more about your relationship with Tony Caridi, your work at MetroNews, your work producing the Three Guys Before the Game podcast. Listeners, you've heard us talk about that. I discussed that with Tony Caridi on episode 111, June of 2024. We had another one of the three guys on the Main Thing podcast. That was Hoppy Kercheval, the Dean of Broadcasting in West Virginia, who joined us just a few weeks ago, recently in 2025. That was episode 123. How did you get that gig?
So it's the fall of 2017. And myself, along with three of my other good friends from high school, all decided, let's go to the WVU Oklahoma State football game in Morgantown. Weather was abysmal, terrible. Mountaineers lose. Game's over. We're walking out. We're talking. We're like, there's a basketball game tonight. Let's go to this basketball game. So WVU men's basketball was playing Albany in an exhibition game at home. We go to the Mountaineer games, general admission. You can sit wherever you want. We pay to get in. We're sitting about 3 rows from center court behind the scores table.
Okay.
And we're sitting there, and it's the 4 of us, just 4 high school kids. Lo and behold, Tony and his wife Jones sit about 2, maybe 3 rows in front of us, maybe. And halftime comes around, and my friends are poking at me. They know what I want to do. They know how much love I have for sports journalism and broadcasting. And they said, well, go talk to him. Just go talk to him. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, he doesn't want to talk to me. I'm an 18-year-old. He doesn't want to talk to me.
And Tony was not calling the game because
Correct.
It was
just an exhibition game.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So he's just a spectator.
Correct. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? He's going to say, go away.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, let's take a leap of faith. So I go down there. I shook his hand, introduced myself, told him where I was from. And he's like, so what do you want to do? And so I'm like, well, I'd like to pursue a path in sports broadcasting, sports journalism. And he's like, okay, you're going to WVU next year. I said, that's my plan.
Okay.
So we start talking a little bit more, and he's like, when you get up here, shoot me an email and we'll talk further. I got up to Morgantown on a Tuesday. I emailed Tony on Wednesday. By Thursday, I had an interview.
Oh, wow.
So just in a short time frame, I had an interview with him. So I'm sitting there in his office, and we're talking some more. And, you know, the cockiness in me kind of got ahead of me, but I was glad I backed myself up with it. So I said, well, I'm kind of a sports nut in WVU athletics, especially men's basketball.
Ooh.
And so he's like, oh, really? So for people that don't know Tony is one of those guys where he tries to get the best out of you, and he tries to just see what he can do to try and make you think. He said, other than WVU, what were some other schools that Bob Huggins had coached at? So I gave him that. And then he told me, he was kind of like, ooh, okay. So then he was like, give me the starting 5 from WVU's Final Four team when they played Duke in Indianapolis, right there.
Sure.
And he's like, okay. But then, you know, it was just one of those things where if I said something like that, I needed to back it up. So we talked. I met some other people in the building. And he's like, you'll start learning come tomorrow. So that Friday, just learning, just trying to get the handle of everything. And then that following week, I went to work every single day, and I just really started it from there.
Now you're on staff. You have a job with them. You're maybe going into the station every day or several days a week. What was it like being around those guys? Tony, Hoppy, Brad, the rest of the crew?
I didn't understand it as much at that time in those first couple of months in the first couple of years working at Metro News, but the people that I met more than the work itself.
Okay,
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you mentioned those 3 guys, and Tony, Brad Howell, Hoppy Kirchhoff, those 3 guys really instrumental. But then you look at other guys and individuals I was able to surround myself with. Fred Persinger, the voice of high school sports. One of the best guys I've ever been able to surround myself with. Jeff Jenkins is the same way. Travis Jones, the same way. There's been a lot of individuals, but I know I didn't mention everybody, but that collective group that I mentioned at Metro News really, really played a big, big piece into who I am today.
Yeah.
Tony and I have a relationship that I don't think I will ever have with anybody again. And here's why I say that. I'm getting kind of choked up when I'm thinking about this, but my dad is a very important person in my life.
Yeah.
My dad is like, growing up when they would write, who's your hero? My dad is my hero. And I'll always be thankful for that.
Yeah.
He just pushed me and he tested me in different ways. I'm starting to realize now as an adult, but circling back to Tony was a lot like my dad. And, you know, Tony opened his arms and welcomed me into his world. I'm kind of getting emotional, but
it's okay.
Tony is a father figure to me. The 5 years that I had in Morgantown, I mentioned all those people. None of that's possible without Tony Caridi.
Right.
The lessons that he taught me, the jokes that he cracked on me, the rises he tried to get out of me. That's just our relationship. And to have somebody of his stature, I mean, I remember just growing up with my dad and listening to Tony on the radio.
Sure.
All the time. Every Saturday, if we're driving, if we're just at the house, just hanging out, we're turning on the radio.
Yeah.
We're not watching the TV. We're turning on the radio. We're listening to the Mountaineers because the Mountaineers are on football.
Same experience I had growing up.
Yeah.
My dad's truck. We're running around Saturday. We're going to the hardware store or something.
Exactly.
And the pregame's on. And back in my youth, it was Jack Fleming.
Yep.
Later, Tony.
Being able to learn from somebody like him, both from a professional level, but also a life perspective as well.
Yeah.
I firmly believe I will never experience that from an individual like him ever again.
Yeah.
And I am so incredibly thankful and grateful for those opportunities with Tony, because I mentioned how MetroNews saved my life. He's the one that really saved my life.
Yeah.
He found something in me, and he invested in me. And I'm not sitting here today. I'm not working for the state's largest newspaper. I'm not doing what I'm doing. I'm not being able to talk the way that I am fluently without the help of Tony Caridi.
Right on.
Bottom line.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
Taylor, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Thank you for sharing everything that you did, and just so grateful to you.
Thank you, Skip. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate this platform that you've allowed for me.
Absolutely. So long for now. That goes by incredibly fast, doesn't it? Time flies when you're hacking wisdom. Thank you for listening to this wisdom conversation. If you enjoyed this podcast and found the wisdom lesson valuable, then I encourage you to share it with a loved one or friend. Did you know podcast recommendations from one person to another remain the strongest form of podcast growth worldwide? It's true, and we'd appreciate you helping spread the good word. Let's give a big hearty thank you to the crew of the Main Thing Podcast. These are the folks who truly keep the wisdom pipeline flowing. Audio engineer Bob Hotchkiss, strategy advisor Andy Malinowski, public relations and partnerships guru Rachel Bell, social media and digital marketing expert Chloe Linneberg, graphic designer Emma Malinowski, and of course our patrons, those generous folks who provide monthly funding support to help underwrite our costs of production. I couldn't do it without you, nor would I want to. Your feedback matters a lot. If you have a question, a suggestion, maybe an idea, or even a nomination of a future show guest, I'd love to hear from you. Email me at info@themainthingpodcast.com. Well, that's a wrap for this show. I'm your host, Skip Linneberg, signing off for now and inviting you to join us again next time for another special delivery of wisdom. Hi, it's Skip again. I just came back on mic for a quick moment to share a couple reflections from this fabulous wisdom conversation with Taylor Kennedy. What did we learn? What stood out? What can we apply? As someone who's been blessed with great mentors in my life and someone who's done quite a bit of mentoring myself, I loved hearing about the impact that Tony Caridi and Hoppy Kercheval had on Taylor's early career. His confidence, his skills, his curiosity, those are all so strong now and stand out so wonderfully, and also helped shape his vision for his work life. Taylor has benefited greatly from those wonderful mentors. And also, you heard how Taylor summoned up the courage to meet and connect with an accomplished broadcaster like Tony Caridi. An upcoming guest alluded to this same idea in her book, where she wrote that openness and courage were the entry price to creativity. I dare say those are also the admission cost, the entry price for growth and for greatness. Clearly, we heard about the vital need to discuss our challenges with others. When we're feeling anxious or even panicky, we can reach out to family and friends. We don't have to sit in shame and isolation. As Taylor and I discussed, it's not weird to feel those things. And it's not just you. Practically everyone I know has personally dealt with anxiety, depression, panic attacks, or some other form of a mental challenge, you are not alone. And when you do reach out to that trusted friend or family member, you're not dumping on them. So let's get rid of that idea. I want to abolish and eradicate any remnants of a stigma surrounding mental health and get rid of any stigma associated with seeking help or medical care from a counselor, psychologist, pastor, or psychiatrist. Here we are in May. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. Are you with me? Bye-bye stigma. Bye-bye awkwardness. So long shame. Embarrassment. Who even are you? I'm going to continue to talk about my struggles, and I'm going to continue to get help when I need it. I encourage you to do the same.